Whoa, what a day. Aren't you excited? Are you sparking? You are going to end. Yay, sparking. Let's spark. Look at your neurons firing. I think we should have the blinds raised to celebrate the light. Blinds. We want the blinds raised. Blinds. Tell them blinds. Okay, blinds raised. Because I could take the whole 30 minutes to introduce our next speaker. We knew Polly and Julie started, and we started planning. They said, we need someone that can pull this together. And I said, I have the perfect person. Dr. Ed Berger is a quintessential design thinker. Bruce Mao, that I work with, who's one of the greatest design thinkers of all time, said, whenever you solve a problem or have an idea for a better future and make a plan to make it happen, you're a design thinker. That is Ed. He's a brainiac. He has a PhD in mathematics. Whoo, that's crazy. He's a compassionate leader. He's an actionist. What I love about him is that he hates status quo. And my team knows that one thing I do not accept is status quo. Right, Laurie? Right, Audette? Right, Jen? No status quo. Well, Ed said it's one of his favorite things, no status quo. But he did say design can't go too fast because it fatigues the team, but go as fast as possible, but not faster. Don't you love that? Go as fast. I love it. I'm like, now. When does it need to happen? He was president of a university, Southwestern University. He went from mathematics, 5,000 tutorials to get kids excited about math as a problem solving, and he did it. So if he could do that, he can do anything. And now he's CEO of St. David's Foundation, which is one of the largest foundations in Texas. And the whole purpose is to design a better future. But the interesting fact about Ed is he also does improv. And he even performed in Austin, and he wrote for Jay Leno. Please welcome Dr. Ed Berger.
Man without a country. Should I start all over again? By the way, I am your barrier between you and freedom, just so you understand. So, but I really appreciate you letting me join the various tables. They said that I wasn't good enough to actually be given a table, but I was allowed to float, and I had to sit in the really bad seat. So you notice there was a bad seat at every table. That was where I was supposed to sit. But many of you just took the bad seat, which just shows your generosity of spirit to serve humanity in such a nice way. This entire last few minutes of this section before we go in and socialize has been so overblown that there is no way for success. So let's just all agree that this is going to be a flop. Because first of all, the idea that it's called a keynote is wrong. And then this ridiculous buildup that Sandy just gave me, which was very, very sweet, but just way out of proportion. So let me tell you what actually happened. So this is the actual story, in case you want to know. So Sandy called me up, and as you all know, if Sandy asks you to do something, you always say yes. And so she said, we'd love for you to come and talk about, thinking or something, because I do a lot of things about thinking. And I said, sure, that's in my wheelhouse. I'm happy to do that. And then we fast forward several months, and then there was a call that we had on Zoom with a whole bunch of the organizers. They're all actually around here. And that's when I was told, oh, no, we don't want you to prepare anything. We want you just to get up and summarize the whole day. Literally. And I said, so it's like improvisation. So that's why I'm mentioning improvisation. So yeah, I'm supposed to improv. And here was my idea. Do you want me to tell you my idea? Which they rejected. Because they're nicer than I am. I said, this is a great way to illustrate the themes I think that, this was before the meeting, so the themes that I think that we're trying to get across, which is about how space, however you define space and design, can affect our minds and our brains and how we feel. I said, put on the program, keynote address, but no speaker name. So look, if you look at the program, there'll be no name there at all. And then my idea was that Sandy at the beginning, if you rewind to the very, very beginning of the day, and I want actually to play this out in your minds. Let's do a mind experiment right now. So I want you to play this back. So we rewind all the way back to 9 o'clock. Sandy is standing up here, and she's welcoming you. And then she says the following. She says, now, do you see on the schedule, it says keynote, address, and everyone looks and we see that. Well, one of you is going to give it. And you are to summarize the whole day. That's going to be your job, and we're going to pick the person at random. And you are then going to come up here, and you're going to have 30 minutes to, And I thought that was such a good idea because I think it illustrates the entirety of today's conversation. So I want you to just honestly close your eyes for just 1 second. Close your eyes. And I want you to think about Sandy standing up here at 9 o'clock and saying to you that you might be selected to summarize the entire day's event. Now keep your eyes closed, and I just want you to honestly ask yourself, would you have experienced the day differently? You can open your eyes. How many of you care to volunteer and say, I would have experienced the day until, kind of inside. I would have felt differently inside from that. Yeah, I think that's right. It's a different inner life experience because you might be on the hot seat. Now, the idea was that they would pick me, so I would be like the random person, but I would know that. But I spent the whole day, I think, having a very different experience than all of you. Because while you were all having fun, I was like saying, oh God, what the hell am I going to say at the end of this thing? But I think that in some sense, that's the point of this entire conversation, which is that we can change how we feel and how we think by what surrounds us and what brings us together and the stimulation that we receive, whether it's physical or intellectual stimulation. And I love the fact that we were talking about education, and we're talking about play, and we're talking about rest and healing. I mean, that is it. So in some sense, I think that was the thing we should have done, Sandy, by the way. And then I wouldn't have talk at all, because then you could have actually picked someone at random. Anyway, I did take some notes, and I wanted just to share some reflections with you. And then I also want us to do some stuff together. It's the last little bit together. You can think about this as a kind of a call to action. We've heard a lot of lofty things. We've heard a lot of big things. We've heard a lot of imaginative things. And now it's just us. It's just us. What are we going to do if we're going to do anything? And so that is what I'm hoping the next few minutes will really challenge us to think about what we might be able to do. Now, first of all, this whole thing is supposed to be about mindfulness and brain health. We are in the Center for Brain Health, and we've taken brain healthy breaks, which people have been checking their emails and going out and trying to, find some heat. But we haven't done anything that I would classify as brain healthy until now. So now I'm going to ask us to do just 90 seconds of being silent together and just be mindful for just 90 seconds. So let's let our brains settle a little bit. This is something that we should have been doing all through, and maybe some of you did it. I just saw the ones who were checking their phones with me. But maybe some of you were doing this as well. But let's just collectively take 90 seconds just to be in space together, to relax a little bit and settle down as we get ready for the end of our day. Does that sound okay? I will time us. I'm going to sit right here because I'm going to do it with you. And here we go. Thank you. Don't you feel better? I feel great. Okay, so I wanted just to share with you some notes that I took today on the Center for Brain Health stationery, just to prove that this happened in real time, of some of the things that I found particularly either thought-provoking, meaningful, or that kind of pulled together ideas. And this is just from all of the conversations that we had. But this notion of designing environments to change or enhance our experience. And whatever that experience might be, and it might be that you're thinking about wanting to have a team be more effective, or maybe more successful, whatever success means, more efficient, whatever efficiency means, more creative, more joyful, or just engaging more in human flourishing. And that designing environments with these things in mind is just powerful. And that, I mean, to me, that was a meta theme. And I think that there are a lot of ways of doing this, and a lot of it is physical. We're in this amazing, oval space, and a lot of it is just how we behave, we as leaders, and how we behave. And I wanted just to throw out, because you all reminded me of some examples which I never thought of as being in this space that really are. So just to also illustrate some examples where maybe you're doing this and don't even realize you're doing this. So one thing when I teach a class, I will pick out an individual in advance, and that person will be what I call the official questioner. So the official questioner, so what I do is I have everyone's names on index cards, and I shuffle them through like a deck of cards, and I pick one out at the beginning of class at random, and it might say like Ian. And so Ian, okay, so Ian now is the official questioner. His job is not to answer a question, but before the end of the class, his job is to ask one. And this is exactly the situation that I wanted to put all of you in, which is kind of putting you at the edge of your seat. I did this once. I was teaching up at Baylor for a semester, and I did this. And it was at the beginning of the semester. I picked out this woman, and her name was Liz. And so Liz was the official questioner. By the end of class, she asked a question. And then a few days later, she came to my office for office hours to talk to me. And I said, and I didn't know much about Liz. This semester just began. And so the only thing I knew was she was the first official questioner. And so I said, oh, Liz, are you honored that you were the first official questioner of the semester in my class? Which I thought was kind of cute or funny. I thought she'd laugh, and she didn't. She got very, very serious. And she said, no. She said, in fact, I was petrified. I couldn't believe that you picked my card out of everyone in the class. You picked my card. And she said, and then I had to sit there for the whole class and listen to every single word you said so that I could figure out a question to ask. But that's the point. She had a different inner life experience by what we set up for her. And to me, that's the design we're talking about here, is creating different inner life experiences for our colleagues, our friends, our community, our neighbors, so that they can, however you want to say, enhance their experience. And so I think that we do a lot of this already, but maybe we don't give ourselves enough credit. And so I challenge all of you to think about, even if it's not spatial, how you're setting up a meeting, but how are you engaging and encouraging that type of design through everything that we do. I want to give you another example, which is my favorite one. I'm a big fan of what I call effective failure. So effective failure is when something doesn't go right, but you don't just kind of move it aside or pretend it never happened and then say, well, we'll try something else. But hold on to that failed attempt like a jewel and really move it around so you can see all the facets and you could see all the subtlety until you have an aha moment, until you see something that you hadn't seen before. Making the invisible visible, which I would also argue is the theme of the day, is trying to pull people out from that their everyday experience to have a richer experience. And then once you have that epiphany, if you will, then you can move on and then try something else. That's effective failure. Ineffective failure is just to ignore it, because the greatest teacher that one has is their own mistakes. If we take the mindful time to stop and reflect. So I so believe this that I put my money where my mouth is, or basically my students' grades where my mouth is, and 10% of my students' final grade in their class with me is based on the quality of their effective failure. Think about that for a second. So to get an A in my class, you have to fail effectively. This would make my students' heads explode, which is part of the joy of being an educator, by the way. So, but the point is this, and I didn't realize this until today, this is a environmental design. Because I've created an environment in my classroom where it's okay to get something wrong, which is hard to create. It's hard to design that. But that's the kind of creativity, if you're trying to foster creativity, which I am trying to do in everything I'm trying to do, then you have to be able to foster it in a way that it's encouraged. So when someone would raise their hand and say something and it's wrong, instead of feeling embarrassed, they would say, oh, my quality of failure grade today is really high, and everyone goes, ha, 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 and we move on, because we've learned something from that. They realize that they are playing the role of teacher at that moment. That's a design element. So not only when we think about the spaces in which we work and live and play, and not only when we think about how we configure those spaces, this today could have been like a auditorium setup in this space, right? I've been in this room when it's been an auditorium setup. It's not. It was thoughtfully put together so there'd be collaboration. So even as we think about how to use the spaces we have, I think it's important for us to also think by design about what happens in those spaces. How do we as leaders inspire our colleagues and our friends and our family and our community to think even bigger, to think even more imaginative? And what I learned today is that there is design in all of that. And with intentionality, we can have enormous impact. Enormous impact. So those are just a couple of examples that I wanted to share with you. And they're transferable, by the way. You might be saying, Ed, oh, the quality of effective failure, 10%, that's great. But I'm not teaching a class. I'm not teaching a class anymore right now. I'm at a foundation. And I brought that exact same spirit to the foundation. I talked about effective failure the day I arrived. And I talked about how if this foundation is going to be innovative, it's going to be creative, it's going to try to be cutting edge, whatever that means, we're not going to get it right all the time. I worked with my board to get them ready and saying, not every single grant we're going to make is going to be a Walt Disney happy ending. There are going to be some clunkers. And if you are not seeing enough clunkers, you have to hold me accountable and say, you need to fail more. Because otherwise, we're not pushing ourselves. And we're not realizing the potential that we all have within us as human beings. And I think that's another innate theme of today, is the idea of inspiring ourselves, not just in this room, but ourselves as humans, to push ourselves and to figure out where those limitations are individually, not as a group, but just as a person. What can I do? What are my possibilities? And then see how close we can to realize those possibilities. So quality of effective failure is something that we can all incorporate tomorrow, wherever we work, and just encourage it. And I've had a couple of staff members approach me, I've been at the foundation now 5 years, and say that people were afraid of making mistakes before I arrived, which I will say I was very surprised, because the foundation is a very friendly, warm, inviting, everyone is, family kind of environment. So it's not like it wasn't cancerous. But there was this knife apparently hanging over everyone's head on a little teeny twine, and if you made a mistake, that was it. And I said, well, that just is not going to exist anymore. Now, it took some time for people to then learn to trust me, but after a point, now I think I have some colleagues who are much more wildly imaginative. I think that not only brings joy, but it also brings, I think, potentially greater success. So I wanted to share that with you, because we can design a different experience through the design of whatever we have. And that was one thing that I'm taking away from today's conversation. Okay, and by the way, in case you're wondering, I have a total of 3 pages. That was one of them. How am I doing? Oh my God, this is great. Okay, so now, I want to talk about one of my favorite topics. By the way, thank you for the great quote. I love when people quote me in front of me. And you picked such a good one. I have to admit, that's my favorite quote, which is, to go as fast as possible, but no faster. I love that. Please use that and attribute it to Edward Burger, B-U-R-G-E-R, like hamburger, because that's a great quote. And I didn't even think about that, but that, I think, has a design element too. But I'm not going to talk about that. That wasn't my idea. That was Sandy's. I want to talk about my latest great thing that phrase that I think I put together, and I call it micro-progress. I love this idea of micro-progress, and I urge all of you to think about it and hopefully embrace it. I'll just share with you personally that this is something that I kind of came to about 2 years ago. I lost my mom. And if anyone who's lost someone, in their lives, it's just really hard, especially, I'm an only child, so it was me. I had to do everything. Like, I had to literally do every single thing that's involved in that process. And it was overwhelming at times. And I just said, you know what? I'm just going to do one tiny little thing. And then I said, oh, micro-progress. And now my whole life is micro-progress, and I think it's great. And I have 10 minutes left. You were supposed to show me the red sign. Well, but you didn't tell me the solution. It doesn't count. We had a whole system of the red. The first red was going to mean 10, and then, okay, well, I don't want to bore you with it, but okay. Anyway, so, and I love this because just as we were closing out, when we were looking at these, I love this quote, little bit of intention. That's a very poetic way of saying micro-progress. And so, if you were like me, sitting and listening to some of these really amazing minds, it can potentially seem overwhelming, or it could also seem like, wow, I don't have $150 million to rebuild something, or micro-progress. We can think at the smallest levels, and if we keep making progress incrementally, we can revolutionize the world. And so I just love that as a theme. Okay, and now I am going to get right to the end here. So, I want to talk a little bit about brain design, because I think this is a really interesting theme that this entire campus is really all about, and certainly Sandy just represents. And this idea of design with brains in mind, I think, is something that we need to all leave with. I mean, to me, that's one of the take-homes that we should all be leaving with, is that if we're designing anything, we need to have our brains and our colleagues' brains or our community's brains in mind. And that can have an effect on not only what we experience, but how we experience it. And that was one of the many things that I got from our conversation. Okay, I was going to tell you a very, very funny story that you inspired, but I don't have time, so I'm going to cut through that. And so, but I just want to say that through space and design, we can intentionally build culture, which is something that was brought up several times, and community. And I was going to tell you a very, very good story that illustrated that, but it required linear algebra, and I thought maybe we're getting too late. But anyway, okay, you can ask me later if you want. So through the design thinking process and through brain health, we really can change how we feel. And for people in this room, I think the question that now needs to be asked is, how do you want to feel? And I mean that as a genuine question. I mean, whether you're thinking about a team, or whether you're thinking about a community, or whether you're thinking about a group of students, what is it that you want them to feel? And then how do you backwards engineer not just the design of the space, but also the design of the mind to try to realize that? So this question of, okay, you can feel a certain way, how do you want to feel, I think is one that I really found thought-provoking. Okay, and now in my last in my last 5 minutes. It says 52. I have 8 minutes. Yeah, okay. She tried to steal 3 minutes. No. I will never go late. No, I don't do that. But you tried to steal 3 minutes, Julie, and I just don't appreciate that. I'm just saying you put up 5. I saw 5 fingers. Okay, let me tell you my last page. Because this is something where I tried to pull together some threads to offer something that's new. Everything I've said has been reflective of what we all heard. I'm just trying to synthesize. So thinking about brain health, which I'm a huge fan of. This is how Sandy and I know each other. I know a bunch of folks who work here. As an educator for 30 years, brain health is extremely important to me. As you all know, the synaptic tissue, all the stuff that you see up on the chandelier here, that continues to grow and gets bushier and bushier until we're basically in our late 20s, early 30s. So when I would see these young minds, they were still a work in progress. And to me, that's a huge responsibility. So I've created courses around thinking. I've written books around thinking. In fact, I have some that I'll give out to you in a second as prizes. But this idea of mindfulness. And I want to share with you a new hobby that I have, which is the antithesis of mindfulness, and that's why I love it. It's like the opposite of mindfulness. So I now am a glass blower. Have you ever seen these things? There's a TV show you can watch. But these are where you have these big, heavy pipes, and then you go into and you pick up, like honey, molten glass. It's this beaming orange. And it hangs there at the end of your pipe, and then you shape it, and you blow into it, and you build a bubble, and it's fantastic, by the way. It's the greatest thing. It's really, really hard. And ask me during cocktails, and I'll tell you about it. I'll show you pictures of my favorite works, whatever. I love it because it's a metaphor for how we live our modern lives. Think about it for a second. Even if you've never done this, imagine a heavy pipe, and at the end of the pipe, you have this molten hot glass. Always acting on it is the force of gravity. And so, if you want to keep the symmetry of whatever it is that you're making, like a dish or a cup or whatever it is, you have to constantly move the pipe. If you are glass blowing, you're constantly turning. You are always in motion. This is the antithesis of mindfulness, which is being still, even if it's for 90 seconds. It's the idea of being still. It's stillness. So every time I am doing glass blowing and you're in this hot shot, it literally is thousands of degrees because you have these furnaces, I am thinking about mindfulness. So I'm kind of being mindful when I'm doing the least mindful thing you can imagine. But I think it's important to point out that it is the silence and the stillness that we are trying to realize when we think about brain health, brain wellness, and just the brain. And so whether it's the design of spaces or the design of how we interact with each other, I think that stillness and that calm is essential if we want to try to generate that. Okay, so now, here's my big finish. Are you ready for the big finish? Gosh, I hope it is good. Because if you don't like it, this is all I got. This is my last page. All right. So neuroplasticity, we've heard a lot about that today, and I love that because, again, you can kind of see these things up there. It's going on inside of us. There's almost a romantic notion to the idea that we're kind of growing inside intellectually, and let's face it, it's just not practical in everyday lives. It's not going to help you go down I-35 any faster. It's just not. And so I was trying to think today about how to take this big scientific idea, but micro progress, make it meaningful for us. And so really, in my mind, and I'm not looking at any scientist here because this could be wrong, but this is just the world according to Ed. To me, it's the external stimulation that by design can change us, can help us grow, can help us evolve through those experiences and through our surrounding. And I think that leads to this neuroplasticity because of the stimulation. But it's really external. There's kind of a give and a take. The external world kind of inspires something inside of us, or not, in which case we don't have that kind of growth. And so now I've come up with a new phrase. Okay, this is my big finish. Oh, God, if this is not good, I've got nothing. But I'm out of time, so it's okay. Okay, here's the phrase of the day. Experiential plasticity. And so thinking about experiential plasticity through design. Thank you. Who said that? Thank you very much. I was very proud of that. Yeah, so that is a new phrase that has never been uttered by a human being. So I want to just leave you with that as something to think about, because a neuroplasticity, you can't do anything really concrete. You can't like drill a hole in your head or in a colleague's head, even though you might want to. You can't do that and then kind of fix things around and connect the synaptic tissue. But you can do this. Experiential plasticity is possible. So with that, I just want to end with my answer to the homework. We had this 2 plus 5 plus 7. I don't know what 14 means, but that's what the answer is because I'm a mathematician, I know. But the 2 part asks for kind of 2 takeaways for you. And I just thought I will share, as I close, my 2 takeaways. And the first one I just share with you is experiential plasticity through design. That's a new idea for me that I'm going to have to think about a little bit. And the second one maybe is obvious, but I think it's just worth calling out, which is to acknowledge and embrace our own humanity. We are not machines. We are human beings. And I think especially today in our society, we lose sight of the humanity that we all possess and we all share and that bring us together. And when we're thinking about things of design for brain health, to uplift people, to me that is acknowledging and honoring the humanity of us all, which I think is essential. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you. Oh. I brought some of my books. I was going to give them as prizes, but I didn't do that. So this is the 5 elements of effective thinking. If you want, I will give the prizes out to the first people who grab them. So it's going to be fastest. So if you want one, grab one. And that is it. Great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much to the amazingly adaptive Thank you so much to the amazingly adaptive and agile Dr. Berger for that amazing improv session. I am truly impressed. He's also demonstrated to us that he's not colorblind because he can tell the difference between red and green. If we could go to the next slide, please. We'd like to take this opportunity to collect some feedback from all of you on what you experienced here today and whether it was plastic or not, and how we can do better. We'd like to continue doing these kinds of events, and we would very much like to know how we can improve. What worked for you? What can we improve on? What should we start, stop, continue as we are embarking on this new journey with the Building Brains Coalition? After you finish your survey, there's an open bar and some yummies. And once everybody gets a beverage, we'll have a toast to kind of wrap up the day. So thank you all so much.
One last thing, hang on. Before we do this, Sandy and I really wanted to thank Julie and Lisa. Where is Lisa? From the Center for Brain Health. She's getting the reception ready. The entire team from HKS and the Center for the Brain Health that worked on this. So please, a huge round of applause. And I think experiential plasticity became the first agenda item of the Brain Building Coalition. I think that just happened. We are so grateful that everyone came. For me, one of the biggest takeaways was remembering that when we build anything, we are building brains. But it's not always just the built environment. But the built environment tends to be the forgotten piece and the lever we don't pull enough overall. So in the idea of micro progress, one question as you go in, here's the first thing that will happen when you go to the reception. You'll try to steal the books that other people stole very quickly. I know that's going to happen, Ed, and you started that. So people will start to steal the books that got taken. But the second thing would be, think about what you're going to do tomorrow. and that is a big thing for us, is we got this right here in Texas for a reason. We got all of you together for a reason, because we thought if you came together, you could make a difference almost immediately. So in reception, we'd love to talk about what does it look like tomorrow? What would you do tomorrow? And if we built this coalition, are we even interested in coming together? You'd have to shout out a yes or a no. It has to be a shout. Do we want a Building Brains coalition? Yes. I couldn't hear anything. Yes. One more time. Yes. All right.
So I'm grateful too. I mean, when you building brains, I love building and brains put together, that every single moment your brains have changed while you've been here. And we didn't get to talk about the design of our building, but I think you can see that this is the brain's frontal lobes, which is your coach that guides you to our micro progress steps. What's surprising about the brain is it's just these tiny steps, practices that dramatically change the brain. You don't have to do a PhD. You don't have to do global changes. It's these micro progress, simple steps. Every single day, your brain changes and the world changes for the better. Let's join forces with this Building Brains Coalition. How honored we are to have HKS and Upali together. Our Center for Brain Health staff is really dedicated to this. We would both love to work with every single one of you. We need more. Everybody counts or no one counts. Join us. We look forward to it. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you, Ed. Ed, that was brilliant. One more round for Ed. Brilliant. Thank you. Yahoo!